The rain soaked through my clothes as I watched my mother-in-law, Eleanor Windsor, throw the last of my belongings onto the front lawn of the family estate. My husband David stood in the doorway, his face a mask of cold indifference as he watched the scene unfold. "I always knew you were a gold digger," Eleanor spat, her perfectly manicured finger pointing at me accusingly. "Now everyone knows you've been stealing from the family foundation. The evidence is irrefutable. My name is Catherine Windsor, and at 34, I was being framed for embezzling millions from the charity foundation I'd helped build over the last 8 years. But Eleanor had made one critical mistake in her plan to destroy me. She'd underestimated just how much I knew about her own illegal activities. "David," I said softly, looking at my husband of 10 years, "are you really going to let her do this without even hearing my side?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "The bank statements don't lie, Kate. The transfers came from your account. How could you?" I thought about the USB drive tucked safely in my purse, containing 5 years' worth of evidence I'd gathered about Eleanor's own financial schemes. Documents showing how she'd been using the foundation as her personal piggy bank, funneling donations into offshore accounts while maintaining a facade of philanthropic nobility. "You're right, David," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Bank statements don't lie. Remember that." Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly, the first crack in her triumphant demeanor. She'd always been good at reading people, at sensing when someone knew more than they should. But not good enough. I'd started documenting her activities 3 years ago, when I first noticed discrepancies in the foundation's books. Small things at first: unexplained expenses, missing donation records, irregular transfers. But as I dug deeper, a pattern emerged. Eleanor wasn't just stealing. She was running a sophisticated money laundering operation through the very charity she claimed to cherish. "If you ever try to come back," Eleanor warned, "I'll make sure you face criminal charges. The police are already investigating." I picked up my suitcase from the wet grass, maintaining my composure despite the rain and humiliation. "Interesting threat, Eleanor. I wonder what the police would find if they investigated everyone involved with the foundation's finances." Her face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Is that supposed to be a threat? Nobody will believe anything you say now. You're finished in this town." I walked to my car, placing my suitcase in the trunk. Through the rain-streaked windows, I could see David still standing in the doorway. The man I'd loved for a decade, now a stranger under his mother's influence. Eleanor had spent years poisoning him against me, and today she finally succeeded. What she didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment. Every suspicious transaction, every falsified document, every secret meeting with her questionable business associates. I had records of all of it. The evidence was backed up in multiple locations, ready to be released at exactly the right moment. As I started the engine, Eleanor appeared at my window, her expensive silk blouse getting soaked in the rain. "One more thing," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "The board meeting is tomorrow. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are." I smiled, thinking about the encrypted email I'd scheduled to send to every board member in exactly 12 hours. "Looking forward to it, Eleanor. I'm sure it will be a meeting no one forgets." The next morning, I sat in my hotel room watching my phone explode with notifications. The encrypted email I'd sent to the board members had done exactly what I'd intended, exposed just enough of Eleanor's activities to create panic without revealing my full hand. "Emergency board meeting moved to 9 a.m., read the first text from Thomas, the foundation's legal counsel and one of the few people who'd always been kind to me. "What have you done?" came David's message moments later. "Mom's hysterical. She says you're making up lies." I took a sip of coffee, remembering the night 3 years ago when I first discovered the truth. I'd been working late at the foundation, reviewing donation records, when I stumbled upon a hidden folder in Eleanor's private server. Inside were documents detailing millions in misappropriated funds, all carefully concealed behind a web of fake charities and shell companies. My phone rang. Eleanor's number. I let it go to voicemail, then played her message. "You little snake." Her voice trembled with rage. "If you think you can destroy what I've built, you're sadly mistaken. I'll bury you." I clicked open my laptop, pulling up the real evidence I gathered. The email to the board had just been a warning shot, proof of some minor financial irregularities. Enough to raise serious concerns, but not enough to send anyone to prison. The real bombshell was still waiting. Thomas called next. "Kate, it's chaos here. Eleanor's trying to call an emergency vote to dissolve the board. She's claiming you hacked her computer and planted false evidence. How convenient, I replied. And the external audit I requested. That's the thing, she's fighting it tooth and nail. Says it's a waste of resources during this crisis. I smiled. Interesting. Check your email in 5 minutes. I'm sending you something she really won't want anyone to see. The document I sent Thomas was a detailed record of Eleanor's largest scheme, a fake children's hospital project in South America. She'd raised millions for it, earned glowing press coverage, even hosted elaborate fundraising galas. But the hospital didn't exist. The money had disappeared into a complex network of offshore accounts, while desperate families were left waiting for medical care that would never come. My phone buzzed again. David. We need to talk, his message read. Alone. Meet me at our spot. Our spot, the small cafe where we'd had our first date, where he proposed, where we'd spent countless Sunday mornings planning our future. Before Eleanor had poisoned everything. I hesitated, then replied, Okay, 30 minutes. As I gathered my things, another email came through. This one from Agent Sarah Martinez at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. I contacted her office weeks ago, building a relationship just in case things went this way. Evidence received, her message read, moving forward with the investigation. Stay available. The cafe was quiet when I arrived, just a few morning customers lingering over coffee. David sat in our usual corner booth, looking like he hadn't slept. The confident, successful businessman was gone, replaced by someone who seemed lost and uncertain. Explain, he said as I sat down. Please tell me you didn't actually hack into Mom's private servers. I pulled out my laptop. I didn't need to hack anything, David. Your mother gave me access years ago, remember? When she made me head of operations, she just never bothered to revoke it after she started framing me. The Foundation's boardroom felt different as I walked in that afternoon. Gone was the usual atmosphere of polite deference to Eleanor Windsor. Instead, the air crackled with tension as board members huddled in small groups, whispering and glancing nervously at their phones. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, her usual regal posture stiff with barely contained rage. When she saw me enter with David by my side, her eyes widened in disbelief. You dare show your face here, she snarled, standing up. Security. Sit down, Mother, David said quietly. Everyone needs to hear this. Thomas cleared his throat from his position at the other end of the table. Before we begin, I should inform everyone that FBI agents are currently executing search warrants at all Foundation offices and Mrs. Windsor's private residence. The room erupted in chaos. Eleanor's face went from red to white in seconds. This is ridiculous, she shouted over the noise. This woman, she pointed at me, has orchestrated a campaign of lies to destroy this foundation. She's the criminal here. I walked calmly to the podium, connecting my laptop to the presentation screen. Let's talk about crimes, Eleanor. Shall we start with a non-existent children's hospital in South America? Or would you prefer to discuss the shell companies you've been using to launder donation money? The screen filled with documents, bank statements, emails, photographs. 8 years of careful documentation displayed for everyone to see. That's enough. Eleanor lunged for the podium, but David caught her arm. It's over, Mom, he said, his voice breaking. I've seen everything. The fake charities, the offshore accounts, the families you exploited. How could you? Eleanor's composure finally cracked. Everything I did was for this family, to maintain our position, our influence. You think your father's legacy could survive on legitimate charity work alone? The board members watched in stunned silence as Eleanor Windsor, pillar of society and celebrated philanthropist, revealed her true nature. And you, she turned to me, venom in her voice. You self-righteous little nobody. I knew from the moment David brought you home that you'd be trouble. Too smart, too curious, too unwilling to look the other way. I clicked to the next slide. Photos of the families who'd been promised medical care from the non-existent hospital. You're right, Eleanor. I never learned to look the other way. That's why I spent 3 years gathering evidence, building a case, making sure that when the truth came out, it would be undeniable. The boardroom doors opened and Agent Martinez entered with 2 other FBI agents. Mrs. Windsor, we need you to come with us. Eleanor looked around wildly, but found no allies. The board members she'd manipulated for years now stared at her with disgust. David, the son she controlled through emotional manipulation, stood firmly by my side. "You'll regret this," she hissed as the agents led her away. "All of you." In the aftermath, David and I worked with the FBI to unravel the full extent of Eleanor's schemes. The foundation underwent a complete restructuring, with new oversight measures and transparency protocols. Most importantly, we established a real medical assistance program for the families Eleanor had betrayed. 6 months later, I stood at the podium again, this time announcing the foundation's legitimate achievements. David sat in the front row, smiling up at me with pride and regret in his eyes. Our marriage had survived, but changed. Stronger now that Eleanor's influence was gone, yet humbled by how close we'd come to losing everything. Eleanor was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The woman who had once ruled over charity galas and society pages now wore prison gray, her empire of lies demolished by the very daughter-in-law she tried to destroy. As I drive home each evening past the foundation's offices where honest work now happens, I often think about Eleanor's words. "Everything I did was for this family." She never understood that true family isn't built on lies and manipulation. It's built on trust, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what's right. David and I are expecting our first child, a daughter. Sometimes I wonder if she'll inherit her grandmother's strength and determination. If she does, I'll teach her what Eleanor never learned, that those qualities are best used to build things up, not tear them down. The Foundation's newest project breaks ground next week, a real children's hospital, this time in our own city. Eleanor's portrait no longer hangs in the boardroom. Instead, there's a wall of photos showing the families we've actually helped, a daily reminder of why integrity matters more than image. They say the truth always comes out in the end. But sometimes I've learned it needs a little help from someone who's willing to play the long game, to gather evidence piece by piece, and to stand firm when everything seems lost. Eleanor thought she was destroying me that rainy day when she threw me out. Instead, she only succeeded in revealing who she really was, and who I could become when pushed to fight for what's right.